The emergency alarm shattered the quiet of Medical Station Kepler at 0300 hours. Dr. Sarah Mitchell jolted awake in her quarters, her hand instinctively reaching for the communication panel beside her bed. The red light pulsing across her ceiling told her everything she needed to know. This was not a drill. "Dr. Mitchell, report to command immediately," the voice crackled through the speaker. It was Commander Peterson, and he sounded tense. Sarah had worked on the frontier station for 3 years, and she had never heard that particular edge in his voice before. She dressed quickly, pulling on her medical uniform and tying her dark hair back into a practical bun. The corridors were nearly empty as she made her way to command. Only the night shift personnel were present, their faces lit by the glow of their monitoring stations. They watched her pass with curious expressions, but no one spoke. Commander Peterson stood in the center of command, his arms crossed as he stared at the main view screen. On it, Sarah could see a Viridian diplomatic vessel. The ship looked elegant even in distress, its bioorganic hull shimmering with the iridescent colors typical of Viridian engineering. But something was wrong. The usual rhythmic pulse of light that indicated a healthy Viridian ship was irregular, flickering like a dying heartbeat. "Dr. Mitchell," Peterson said without turning around, "we have a situation." Sarah stepped forward, her medical training already cataloging possibilities. "What kind of situation, Commander?" "The kind that could start a war," he replied grimly. He gestured to the communications officer, who played a recorded message. The holographic image that appeared showed a Viridian male, his insectoid features twisted with worry. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke in accented but clear English. "This is Ambassador Thel of the Viridian diplomatic vessel Constellation. We require immediate medical assistance. Princess Zyra and Princess Kessa have been infected with a genetic plague. Both are dying. We need human medical intervention. Please respond." The message ended. Sarah felt her stomach drop. She knew enough about Viridian politics to understand what this meant. The princesses were not just royalty. They were the future of the entire Viridian species. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. "Their medical officer estimates 48 hours before the damage becomes irreversible," Peterson said. He finally turned to face her, and Sarah saw the conflict in his eyes. "But there is a complication." "What complication?" Peterson pulled up another screen. It showed a communication from Earth's Council, timestamped just 20 minutes earlier. Sarah read it quickly, and with each line her disbelief grew. The Council had analyzed the situation. They had reviewed the medical supplies available on Station Kepler. Their conclusion was clear and cold. The station had enough resources to save one Viridian royal, not both. The treatment required rare biocompatible materials that were in short supply on the frontier. But that was not the worst part. The Council had given specific orders. Sarah was to choose which princess to save. They had even provided her with profiles of both sisters to help her make an informed decision. "They want me to choose?" Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They want me to let one of them die?" "Those are the orders," Peterson confirmed. He did not look happy about it either. "The Council believes this gives us leverage. Whichever princess survives will owe humanity a debt. The Viridian Empire will be more cooperative with our expansion into their territory." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. She had not become a doctor to play political games with lives. The Hippocratic oath she had taken was clear. First, do no harm. How could choosing to let someone die be anything but harm? "Let me see their files," she said tersely. Peterson transferred the data to her personal tablet. Sarah sat down at a nearby station and began to read. The information was detailed, almost too detailed. Someone on Earth had done their homework. Princess Zyra was the elder sister, 28 in Earth years. She was a warrior diplomat, trained in both combat and negotiation. Her file included military records showing her commanding Viridian defense fleets with skill and honor. She had negotiated 3 peace treaties with neighboring species. The Viridian military loved her. If she died, the file warned, there could be a succession crisis. Factions within the military might refuse to acknowledge Kessa's claim to the throne. Princess Kessa was younger, only 24. She was a scientist and empath, gifted with the rare ability to sense and influence emotions in others. Her research had advanced Viridian medical technology by decades. But more importantly, she carried specific genetic markers that were essential for the next generation of Viridian queens. Without those markers, the royal bloodline would weaken, possibly leading to the collapse of their complex caste system within a few generations. Sarah closed her eyes. This was impossible. How could anyone make this choice? Save the warrior princess and potentially doom the species genetically. Save the scientist princess and risk civil war. Either way, catastrophe followed. When do they need my decision? She asked. The Viridian ship will dock in 2 hours, Peterson said. The council expects your choice within 6 hours of examining the patients. 2 hours. Sarah stood up and walked to the viewport. She could see the Viridian vessel more clearly now as it approached the station. Somewhere on that ship, 2 sisters were dying. They were probably scared. They might be saying goodbye to each other right now, not knowing that one of them had already been condemned by human politics. This is wrong, Sarah said quietly. I agree, Peterson replied. But it is also an order from Earth Council. If you refuse, they will send someone else. Someone who will follow orders without question. Sarah turned to face him. And if I choose? What happens to the other princess? She will die within 48 hours, Peterson said flatly. The plague attacks Viridian neural tissue. Once it reaches a certain stage, nothing can stop it. Sarah thought about her training. She had spent 12 years learning how to save lives. She had studied alien biology specifically so she could help species other than her own. She had taken an oath to heal, not to calculate political advantages. But she also understood the reality of her situation. If she refused, the council would replace her. If she tried to save both sisters without authorization, she could face court-martial. Her career would be over. She might even face prison time for disobeying direct orders during a diplomatic mission. Yet when she closed her eyes, all Sarah could see were 2 sisters. 2 people who had done nothing wrong except be born into royalty. 2 individuals who deserved to live. When the ship docks, Sarah said slowly, I want to meet both princesses. I want to examine them personally. I want to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Of course, Peterson agreed. But Sarah, understand what is at stake here. This decision will affect human-Viridian relations for generations. Sarah nodded. She understood perfectly. The council wanted her to be the instrument of their political strategy. They wanted her hands to carry out their cold calculations. The question was whether she would let them. As the Viridian ship drew closer to the docking bay, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. She would meet these sisters. She would look them in the eyes. And then she would decide, not what was best for Earth's political interests, but what was right. Even if it cost her everything. The docking procedure took 30 minutes. Sarah spent that time reviewing every piece of medical data the Viridians had sent ahead. The plague was unlike anything she had seen before. It attacked the neural pathways that controlled the production of royal pheromones, the chemical signals that held Viridian society together. Without those pheromones, the complex caste system would collapse into chaos. When the airlock finally opened, Ambassador Thel stepped through first. He was tall for a Viridian, nearly 7 feet, with the distinctive chitinous plates that marked him as a diplomat caste. His compound eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Dr. Mitchell, he said, his voice carrying the clicking undertone of his native language. Thank you for receiving us. Time is critical. Take me to the princesses, Sarah replied. She had no time for diplomatic pleasantries. The interior of the Viridian ship was beautiful in an alien way. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting gently. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across the ceiling like living art. But Sarah noticed the darkness in some sections, areas where the light had died. The ship itself was sick. Ambassador Thel led her to a medical chamber where both princesses lay on organic beds that molded to their bodies. Sarah approached slowly, her medical scanner already active. Princess Zyra opened her eyes first. They were a deep violet color, intelligent and assessing. Even weakened by illness, she radiated authority. Her chitinous armor was decorated with military honors, small crystalline medals that caught the light. Human doctor, Zyra said, her voice steady despite her condition. I am told you must choose between my sister and me. Sarah felt her chest tighten. You know about the council's orders? We intercepted their transmission, Zyra confirmed. We Viridians value honesty even when it is brutal. She paused, mandibles clicking softly. Choose my sister. Kessa carries the genetic future of our people. I am merely a soldier. You are not merely anything, came a weaker voice from the other bed. Princess Kessa struggled to sit up. She was smaller than her sister, with softer features and amber-colored eyes. Zyra commands the loyalty of 17 fleet commanders. Without her, General Mordak will seize power. He has wanted war with the border colonies for years. Sarah moved between the beds, scanning both princesses. The plague had progressed significantly. Their neural pathways were deteriorating, breaking down in patterns that should not be possible naturally. This was engineered, designed specifically to kill Viridian royalty. Who did this to you? Sarah asked. The Krell Syndicate, Zyra answered. They sent us a gift, a ceremonial artifact. By the time we realized it was a bioweapon delivery system, we were both infected. Sarah continued her scans, her mind working through possibilities. The plague was sophisticated, but it had a weakness. It required constant replication to maintain its hold on the neural tissue. If she could disrupt that replication cycle, she might be able to slow its progress. But the Council's orders were clear. She had enough medical supplies for one treatment, not two. I need to run some additional tests, Sarah said. I will return shortly. She left the medical chamber and found Dr. Harris waiting in the corridor. Harris was her closest colleague on the station, a specialist in xenobiology who had worked with dozens of alien species. He looked worried. Sarah, we need to talk, he said urgently. Somewhere private. They found an empty observation room. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the stars, cold and distant. Harris sealed the door behind them and activated a privacy field. The Council is lying, he said without preamble. Sarah turned to face him. What do you mean? I accessed the supply manifests, Harris explained, pulling up data on his tablet. We have more than enough biocompatible materials to treat both princesses. The regeneration serum, the neural stabilizers, the stem cell cultures. We could save them both easily. Sarah stared at the numbers. He was right. The supplies were there, carefully cataloged and stored. More than sufficient for 2 treatments. Why would the Council lie about this? She asked, though she already suspected the answer. Politics, Harris said bitterly. I did some digging. There are factions in the Council who want the Viridian Empire weakened. If one princess dies, the Viridians will be dealing with internal chaos for years. That gives humanity time to expand into disputed territories without Viridian interference. Sarah felt sick. This was not medicine. This was murder disguised as resource management. They knew we could save both, she whispered. They created this false choice deliberately. Exactly, Harris confirmed. And if you defy them, they will court-martial you. I checked the regulations. Disobeying direct Council orders during a diplomatic mission carries a minimum sentence of 10 years in prison. Sarah walked to the viewport and pressed her hand against the cold glass. Behind her, Harris waited silently. She thought about the 2 sisters lying in that medical chamber. She thought about Zyra's steady courage and Kessa's gentle determination. She thought about the oath she had taken to heal, not to harm. There might be another option, she said slowly. Something I noticed in the scans. What did you notice? The sisters have a psychic bond, Sarah explained, turning back to face Harris. It is common in Viridian royalty, but theirs is unusually strong. Their neural patterns are partially synchronized. When one experiences pain, the other feels it too. Harris frowned. How does that help us? Human stem cell therapy works by introducing adaptive cells that can integrate with alien tissue, Sarah said, her mind racing through possibilities. But it requires a compatible neural template to guide the integration. Normally, we have to create that template artificially, which is expensive and time-consuming. But if the sisters are psychically bonded, Harris said, understanding dawning in his eyes, they could share a neural template. Their bond might amplify the treatment effect. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. If we treat them simultaneously, their psychic connection could enhance the stem cell integration. It is experimental. It has never been tested. But theoretically it could work. Harris looked at the data again, calculations running behind his eyes. We would need to modify the standard protocol. Synchronize the treatments down to the second. Use their bond as a biological amplifier. Can it be done? Maybe, Harris admitted. But Sarah, even if the treatment works, you would still be defying direct orders. The Council demanded you choose one. If you save both, there will be consequences. Sarah thought about that. She thought about her career, her freedom, her future. She thought about 10 years in prison. Then she thought about 2 sisters saying goodbye to each other, each one begging her to save the other. Run the calculations, she said firmly. I want to know if this approach is viable. Harris nodded and began working. Sarah returned to the medical chamber where the princesses waited. They looked weaker than before. Time was running out. Dr. Mitchell, Kessa said softly. Have you made your decision? Sarah looked at both sisters. Not yet. But I have a question. Your psychic bond, how strong is it really? The sisters exchanged glances. Zyra spoke first. We can share thoughts, emotions, even physical sensations. When Kessa was injured in childhood, I felt her pain as if it were my own. And it works both ways? Sarah pressed. Yes, Kessa confirmed. Why do you ask? Sarah smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Because I think your bond might save both your lives. Sarah spent the next 3 hours working with Harris in the station's main laboratory. They ran simulation after simulation, testing the theoretical framework of their dual treatment protocol. The psychic bond between the sisters was the key. If they could synchronize the stem cell therapy to use that bond as a biological amplifier, they might be able to save both princesses with the available resources. The simulations were promising. Not perfect but promising. The success rate hovered around 65%, which was better than Sarah had hoped for such an experimental approach. The alternative was a guaranteed death for one sister and political chaos for an entire species. We need to present this to the council, Harris said, reviewing the final calculations. Show them we have a viable option to save both. Sarah nodded. She drafted a detailed report explaining their proposal, including all the medical data, the simulation results, and the resource requirements. She emphasized that this approach would strengthen human-Viridian relations far more than forcing an impossible choice. She sent the report directly to Earth Council with a priority flag. The response came back in 40 minutes. Sarah read it twice, unable to believe what she was seeing. Request denied. The Council's orders were unchanged. Choose one princess within 6 hours or face immediate replacement. They accused her of wasting valuable time on unauthorized experiments. They reminded her that human strategic interests took precedence over alien lives. The final line was coldest of all. Dr. Mitchell, your duty is to obey, not to question policy. Sarah felt something break inside her. Not her spirit, but her last remaining faith in the system she had served for 12 years. She looked at Harris, who had read the message over her shoulder. They do not care, she said quietly. They actually want one of them to die. Sarah, what are you going to do? Harris asked carefully. Before she could answer, Commander Peterson's voice came through her communicator. Dr. Mitchell, report to my office immediately. Peterson's office overlooked the docking bay. Through the window, Sarah could see the Viridian ship, its lights still flickering irregularly. Peterson stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him. The council contacted me directly, he said without turning around. They are not happy with your proposal. They consider it insubordination. It is medicine, Sarah countered. It is a viable treatment option that could save both patients. It is also a direct contradiction of their orders, Peterson replied. He finally turned to face her. Sarah, I have known you for 3 years. You are one of the best doctors I have ever worked with. But right now, you are standing on the edge of destroying your career. My career or 2 lives, Sarah said. That is the choice you are giving me? That is the choice the council is giving you, Peterson corrected. I am just the messenger. You have 4 hours left. Make your selection, treat one princess, and this all goes away. You will be commended for your service. Your career continues. Everyone moves forward. Sarah thought about that word. Forward. As if leaving someone to die was progress. And if I refuse? Peterson sighed heavily. Then I have orders to relieve you of duty and place you under arrest. Dr. Stevens from the night shift will be assigned to make the choice instead. You will face court-martial. Stevens will just follow orders, Sarah said. He will choose whoever the council tells him to choose. Probably, Peterson admitted. But that is not your problem anymore. Sarah, please. Do not throw away everything you have worked for. This is politics. It is bigger than you or me. Sarah walked to the window and looked down at the Viridian ship. She thought about Zyra, steady and brave, insisting her sister be saved. She thought about Kessa, gentle but determined, arguing that her sister's life mattered more. 2 sisters each willing to die for the other. When I became a doctor, Sarah said slowly, I took an oath. First, do no harm. Not first, follow orders. Not first, consider political strategy. First, do no harm. The universe does not run on medical ethics, Peterson said tiredly. Sometimes hard choices have to be made. This is not a hard choice, Sarah replied, turning to face him. This is a false choice. The council created it deliberately to maintain leverage over the Viridians. That is not medicine. That is murder. Peterson's expression hardened. Be very careful what you say next, doctor. Sarah met his eyes steadily. I am going to save both sisters. With or without authorization. Then I have no choice, Peterson said. He reached for his communicator, but Sarah raised her hand. Give me until my deadline, she said. 4 hours. If the council wants me to make a choice, let me make it my way. After that, you can arrest me if you want. Peterson hesitated, his finger hovering over the communicator button. Finally, he lowered his hand. 4 hours, he agreed. But Sarah, security will be watching. If you try anything unauthorized, they will stop you. Understood, Sarah said. She left his office and headed straight for the laboratory where Harris was waiting. We are doing this, she told him without preamble. We are saving both sisters. Harris looked shocked. Sarah, they will court-martial you. They will put you in prison. I know, she said calmly. Are you with me or not? Harris was quiet for a long moment. Sarah could see the conflict in his face. He had a family back on Earth, a wife and 2 children. He had a career to protect. But he was also a doctor, someone who had taken the same oath she had. I am with you, he said finally. What do we need to do? Sarah pulled up the treatment protocol on her tablet. We need to move both sisters to the main medical bay. We need to set up dual surgical stations. And we need to lock down the facility so security cannot interrupt the procedure once we start. That last part is going to be tricky, Harris said. The medical bay has emergency overrides. Command can force entry if they want. Then we need the Viridians to help us, Sarah decided. Ambassador Thel has honor guards on his ship. If they position themselves outside the medical bay, security will not risk an armed confrontation during a diplomatic mission. That could work, Harris agreed. But we need to move fast. Once Peterson realizes what we are doing, he will try to stop us. They worked quickly. Sarah contacted Ambassador Thel and explained the situation. The Viridian diplomat listened carefully, his compound eyes reflecting the light in complex patterns. You are risking much for my people, Thel said. Why? Because it is right, Sarah replied simply. Will you help us? Our honor guard will protect the medical bay, Thel promised. No human security will enter while you work. You have my word. Sarah and Harris began moving equipment into the medical bay. They set up 2 surgical stations side by side, each with its own stem cell integration system. They checked and double-checked every connection, every calibration. There could be no mistakes. The princesses were brought in on floating medical beds. Zyra looked at the dual setup and understood immediately. You are defying your council's orders, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Sarah confirmed. Why? Kessa asked weakly. You will be punished for this. Sarah looked at both sisters. Because you are people, not political tools. Because you both deserve to live. And because sometimes humans have to make our own choices, regardless of what we are told. Zyra reached out with one clawed hand and gently touched Sarah's arm. You honor us, human doctor. Whatever happens, the Viridian people will remember this. Sarah smiled. Let us make sure you are both around to remind them. Harris activated the medical bay's lockdown protocol. Heavy doors slid shut, sealing them inside. Outside, Sarah could see through the observation window as Viridian honor guards took positions along the corridor. They were tall and armored, carrying ceremonial weapons that were no less deadly for their beauty. Commander Peterson appeared on the other side of the glass, his face furious. He activated the intercom. Dr. Mitchell, stand down immediately. That is a direct order. Sarah walked to the intercom panel. I am sorry, Commander. But I have patients to treat. She cut the communication channel. Harris was already preparing the first round of injections. Sarah took a deep breath and looked at the 2 sisters lying before her. Ready? She asked Harris. Ready, he confirmed. Sarah picked up the first injection device. Then let us show them what humans do when faced with impossible choices. We create better ones. The first injection went smoothly. Sarah administered the neural stabilizers to both princesses simultaneously, watching their vital signs on the monitors above each bed. The numbers held steady. So far, the treatment was working exactly as planned. Harris moved to the second phase, preparing the stem cell cultures. These were the critical components, human cells that had been modified to integrate with Viridian neural tissue. In theory, the sisters' psychic bond would help guide the integration process. In theory. Outside the medical bay, Sarah could hear raised voices. Commander Peterson was arguing with Ambassador Thel. The Viridian honor guards had formed a wall across the corridor, their ceremonial spears crossed to block entry. Human security forces had arrived, but they hesitated. No one wanted to be the person who started an armed conflict with a diplomatic vessel. Vitals are stable, Harris reported. Beginning stem cell infusion in 30 seconds. Sarah checked the synchronization monitor. It displayed both sisters' neural patterns side by side. The patterns were moving in harmony, waves of electrical activity rising and falling together. The psychic bond was strong. "On my mark," Sarah said. 3, 2, 1 mark. They injected the stem cells simultaneously. For a moment nothing happened. Then the monitors began to show activity. The stem cells were spreading through the princess's neural pathways, seeking out the damaged tissue caused by the plague. Zaira's eyes opened wide. "I can feel it," she said, her voice strained. "Like fire in my mind." "That is normal," Sarah assured her. "The cells are working. Try to relax." But Kessa was not relaxing. She began to convulse, her body arching on the medical bed. Alarms blared from her monitors. Her heart rate was spiking, her neural activity going chaotic. "What is happening?" Harris shouted over the noise. Sarah rushed to Kessa's side, scanning her frantically. Then she understood. She is feeling Zaira's pain. The psychic bond is transmitting the sensation. She is experiencing both her own treatment and her sister's simultaneously. "Can she survive that?" Harris asked. "I do not know," Sarah admitted. She grabbed a sedative injector, but before she could use it, Zaira spoke. "Stop," the warrior princess commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Do not sedate her. Our bond works both ways. If you dull her pain, you will dull mine as well. The treatment will not work properly." Sarah hesitated, the injector in her hand. Kessa was suffering, her body trembling with the shared agony of two simultaneous procedures. But Zaira was right. The psychic bond was part of the treatment protocol. Interfering with it could ruin everything. "Kessa," Zaira called out. "Sister, focus on my voice. Remember when we were children. Remember the singing pools." Kessa's eyes found her sister's across the space between their beds. "The singing pools?" she whispered. "We swam there together," Zaira continued, her own voice tight with pain but steady. "The water was warm. The crystals made music. We were happy." Sarah watched in amazement as Kessa's vital signs began to stabilize. The psychic bond was still transmitting pain, but now it was also transmitting comfort. The sisters were supporting each other through the shared connection. "It is working," Harris said, pointing at the neural scans. "The stem cells are integrating. Both of them are responding." But then new alarms sounded. This time from Zaira's station. Sarah ran to check the readings and felt her heart sink. Zaira's body was rejecting the human stem cells. Her warrior physiology, designed for combat and enhanced with biological armor, was treating the foreign cells as invaders. Her immune system was attacking the very treatment meant to save her. "We need to suppress her immune response," Harris said, already reaching for the immunosuppressant drugs. "No," Sarah said sharply. "If we suppress her immune system while the plague is still active, it will spread even faster. We will kill her." "Then what do we do?" Harris demanded. "The stem cells are dying. In 5 minutes they will all be destroyed and we will have to start over. We do not have enough supplies for a second attempt." Sarah's mind raced. The stem cells needed to survive long enough to integrate with Zaira's neural tissue. They needed something to protect them from her immune system without weakening her overall defenses. They needed a biological shield. And then she remembered something from her xenobiology training. Human blood contained universal donor properties that sometimes worked across species boundaries. It was rare, unpredictable, and dangerous. But it might work. "Harris, prep a blood transfer system," Sarah ordered. "Whose blood?" he asked. Sarah was already rolling up her sleeve. "Mine." "Sarah, that is insane," Harris protested. "We have no idea if your blood is compatible with Viridian physiology. You could kill her. You could kill yourself." "We are out of options," Sarah said flatly. "Set it up. Now." Harris stared at her for a moment, then moved to obey. He knew she was right. They had no other choice. The blood transfer system was designed for emergency field medicine. It connected Sarah's arm directly to Zaira's through a series of filters and monitors. If Sarah's blood proved incompatible, the system would shut down automatically. Of course, by then the damage might already be done. "This will either work or it will not," Sarah said to Zaira. "Your immune system might accept my blood as neutral, giving the stem cells time to integrate. Or it might reject everything at once." Zaira looked at her with those deep violet eyes. "You are risking your life for mine." "Yes," Sarah confirmed simply. "Why?" "Because you are my patient," Sarah replied. "And I do not abandon my patients." She activated the transfer system. Her blood began flowing through the tubes, filtered and processed, then introduced into Zaira's circulatory system. Sarah watched the monitors, hardly daring to breathe. For 10 seconds nothing happened. Then Zyra's immune response began to change. The aggressive attack on the stem cells slowed, then stopped. Sarah's blood was acting as a buffer, confusing the warrior princess's immune system just enough to let the stem cells survive. "It is working," Harris said in disbelief. "The stem cells are integrating." Sarah felt dizzy. The blood transfer was taking more from her than she had anticipated. But she could not stop now. She gripped the edge of Zyra's bed to steady herself. Kessa cried out from her bed. "Dr. Mitchell, you are hurting. I can feel it through my sister." "I am fine," Sarah lied. The room was starting to spin. "Sarah, your blood pressure is dropping," Harris warned, checking her vitals. "We need to stop the transfer." "Not yet," Sarah insisted. "The integration is not complete." She watched the monitors through blurring vision. The stem cells were spreading, repairing the neural damage caused by the plague. But they needed more time. Just a little more time. Zyra's hand suddenly gripped Sarah's wrist. The warrior princess's strength was surprising even in her weakened state. "Enough, human doctor. You have given enough." "The treatment is not finished," Sarah protested weakly. "It is finished enough," Zyra said firmly. "Harris, disconnect her." "That is a command." Harris did not hesitate. He shut down the blood transfer system and immediately started Sarah on intravenous fluids to restore her blood volume. Sarah wanted to argue, but she was too weak. She slumped into a chair, her head spinning. "Status?" she asked Harris. He checked both princesses carefully. "Zyra's immune response has normalized. The stem cells are integrating successfully. Kessa's vital signs are stable. The psychic bond is actually amplifying the healing process just like you predicted." Sarah felt relief wash over her. It had worked. Against all odds, against all logic, the experimental treatment was actually working. Outside the medical bay, the pounding on the door had stopped. Through the observation window, Sarah could see Commander Peterson talking urgently into his communicator. The Viridian honor guards still held their positions, but the human security forces had pulled back. "They are contacting Earth Council," Harris said, following her gaze. This situation just became a full diplomatic incident. Sarah nodded weakly. She had known there would be consequences. But right now, watching the monitors show two sets of vital signs growing stronger, she found she did not care about consequences. "How long until we know if the treatment is successful?" Zyra asked. 6 hours, Sarah replied. "The stem cells need time to fully integrate and begin producing the royal pheromones. If your neural pathways regenerate properly, you will both be cured." "And if they do not?" Kessa asked quietly. Sarah met her eyes honestly. "Then we will have failed." But the monitors told a different story. Both princesses' neural patterns were stabilizing, synchronizing through their psychic bond. The plague's progression had stopped. The damaged tissue was beginning to repair itself. It was working. Against orders, against politics, against every obstacle placed in their path, it was actually working. Sarah closed her eyes and allowed herself one moment of triumph. Then she opened them again and got back to work. The treatment was not finished yet, and she would see it through to the end, no matter what came after. 6 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Sarah remained in the medical bay, monitoring both princesses constantly. Harris brought her food and water, but she barely touched either. Her eyes stayed fixed on the monitors, watching every fluctuation in their neural patterns. The stem cells were doing exactly what they were designed to do. They integrated with the damaged tissue, repairing the neural pathways that the plague had destroyed. The sisters' psychic bond amplified the healing process, each one's recovery strengthening the others. By hour 4, both princesses were sitting up. By hour 5, their royal pheromone production had resumed. By hour 6, all signs of the plague had disappeared from their systems. "It worked," Harris said, reviewing the final scans. "They are completely cured." Sarah allowed herself to smile. Then she collapsed in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She had done it. She had saved them both. Outside the medical bay, the situation had escalated dramatically. The standoff between human security and Viridian honor guards had drawn attention throughout the station. Word had spread about what Sarah was doing, about her defiance of council orders to save both sisters. The station's crew had opinions. Some supported her. Others called her a traitor. But everyone agreed on one thing. What happened next would change everything. Commander Peterson appeared at the observation window. He looked tired and stressed. He activated the intercom. "Dr. Mitchell, the treatment is complete. Open the doors." Sarah stood up slowly. She walked to the door controls and hesitated for just a moment. Once she opened these doors, she would face the consequences of her actions. Court-martial. Prison. The end of her career. But when she looked back at Zaira and Kessa, both alive and recovering, she knew she would make the same choice again. She opened the doors. Peterson entered first, followed by 4 security officers. The Viridian honor guards moved aside but remained alert. Peterson looked at the 2 princesses, both clearly healthy, then back at Sarah. "Dr. Mitchell, you are under arrest for disobeying direct orders from Earth Council," he said formally. "You will be confined to quarters pending court-martial proceedings." "I understand," Sarah replied quietly. But before the security officers could move, Ambassador Thel stepped forward. "Commander Peterson, I must inform you that I have contacted the Viridian Emperor directly. His ship will arrive at this station in approximately 3 hours. Peterson's face went pale. "The Emperor himself is coming here?" "Yes," Thel confirmed. "This situation has become a matter of imperial importance. I suggest you do nothing to complicate matters further until he arrives." Peterson looked uncertain. Arresting Sarah now, with the Emperor on his way, could create a massive diplomatic incident. But leaving her free meant ignoring direct orders from Earth Council. She will remain on the station, Peterson decided. Under guard. But no formal arrest until the Emperor's arrival. Sarah was escorted back to her quarters. 2 security officers stood outside her door. She lay down on her bed and closed her eyes, too tired to worry about what came next. She woke 3 hours later to the sound of alarms. Not emergency alarms this time, but ceremonial ones. She looked out her window and saw a ship unlike anything she had ever witnessed. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the diplomatic vessel. Its hull glowed with bioluminescence in patterns that seemed to tell stories. The Viridian Emperor had arrived. Sarah was summoned to the main docking bay. It seemed the entire station had gathered to witness the Emperor's arrival. She walked through the crowd with her security escort, feeling hundreds of eyes on her. The Emperor emerged from his ship surrounded by honor guards in elaborate armor. He was ancient by Viridian standards, his chitinous plates marked with intricate patterns that indicated centuries of life. But his movements were steady, his presence commanding. Behind him came Zaira and Kessa, both fully recovered and dressed in royal garments. They had returned to their father's ship to brief him on what had happened. The Emperor's compound eyes fixed on Sarah. She felt a pressure in her mind, a gentle probing. She had heard that Viridian emperors possessed powerful psychic abilities. He was reading her, understanding her intentions and motivations. Then he spoke, his voice resonating with harmonics that made the air vibrate. "Human Dr. Sarah Mitchell, you defied your leaders to save my daughters. You risked your freedom, your career, your very life. Why?" Sarah met his gaze as steadily as she could. "Because it was right. Because they are people who deserve to live. Because I am a doctor, and I will not let politics decide who dies on my watch." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he moved forward until he stood directly before Sarah. He raised one clawed hand and placed it gently on her shoulder. "In my language there is a word. Clutch friend. It means one who protects the young, who values life above all else. It is the highest honor we can bestow on someone outside our species." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Sarah Mitchell, I name you Clutch friend. You are family to the Viridian Empire now. What harms you harms us." The implications of that statement rippled through the crowd. Sarah heard gasps, whispers. The Emperor had just placed Earth's most powerful ally firmly on her side. Commander Peterson stepped forward nervously. "Your Imperial Majesty, the human doctor acted against direct orders from our council. We have protocols that must be followed." The Emperor turned his gaze to Peterson. "Your council ordered her to let one of my daughters die. They created a false scarcity to gain political leverage over my people. Do you deny this?" Peterson opened his mouth, then closed it again. He could not deny it. The evidence was too clear. "The Viridian Empire does not make alliances with those who value strategy over life," the Emperor continued. "But we do make alliances with those who show compassion and courage. Today Dr. Mitchell has shown us what humanity can be. I suggest your council remember that." Over the next week, everything changed rapidly. News of Sarah's actions spread across human space. Public reaction was overwhelmingly supportive. People saw her not as a traitor, but as a hero who had stood up for what was right. Earth Council found itself in an impossible position. They could not court-martial Sarah without destroying the alliance with the Viridian Empire. They could not ignore her actions without appearing weak. The public demanded she be honored, not punished. In the end, politics won again, but this time in Sarah's favor. The council issued a formal statement praising her initiative and medical expertise. They claimed her actions had been part of a calculated strategy to strengthen human-Viridian relations. They promoted her to chief of xenomedicine for the entire frontier sector. Sarah read the statement with bitter amusement. They were taking credit for her defiance, rewriting history to make themselves look good. But she did not care. She had not done it for recognition. The real victory came 2 months later. Princess Zyra and Princess Kessa announced the creation of a joint human-Viridian medical exchange program. Doctors from both species would train together, sharing knowledge and techniques. The program would be headquartered on Station Kepler, with Sarah as its first director. Harris accepted the position as her deputy. Together they began building something that went far beyond politics. They were creating genuine cooperation between species, founded on mutual respect and shared values. Sarah stood in her new office looking out at the stars. On her desk sat 2 items. One was her official commendation from Earth Council, full of flowery language about her service. The other was a simple crystalline pendant, a gift from the Viridian princesses. It glowed softly with bioluminescence, responding to her presence. She picked up the pendant and smiled. This was what mattered. Not the politics, not the recognition, but the lives saved and the bridges built. Her communicator chimed. It was a message from Kessa. Sarah, we have a medical emergency on the border colony of Arcturus 3. Multiple species affected. Will you come? Sarah did not hesitate. She grabbed her medical kit and headed for the docking bay. This was who she was. Not a political symbol or a hero, just a doctor who refused to accept impossible choices. As her ship launched from Station Kepler, Sarah thought about that moment in the medical bay when she had made her decision. The moment when she chose to defy orders and save both sisters. The moment that had changed everything. She had learned something important that day. Humans were not exceptional because they were stronger or smarter than other species. They were exceptional because they could look at an impossible situation and refuse to accept it. They could find third options, create new solutions, and stand firm on principles even when the cost was high. That was the real human advantage. Not strategy or manipulation, but the stubborn insistence that there had to be a better way. And Sarah Mitchell would spend the rest of her career proving it, one impossible choice at a time.